The morning sun cast shadows across Port Royal's auction square, where the dregs of Caribbean society gathered to bid on human misery. Lady Isabella Fairfax pulled her worn cloak tighter, trying to blend into the crowd of merchants and slavers. She shouldn't be here. A lady of her station had no business in such a place, but desperation had eroded social boundaries, and Isabella was desperate. "Lot 17!" bellowed the auctioneer. "Captain Marcus Drake, formerly of the Crimson Revenge. Captured after 3 years evading His Majesty's Navy. Starting bid, 50 pieces of 8. Isabella's breath caught as guards dragged a man onto the platform. Even in chains, Captain Marcus Blackheart Drake commanded attention. His dark hair fell across sharp features, but it was his steel-grey eyes that held her, unbroken, burning with defiance that no captivity could extinguish. 60, called a voice. 70, shouted another. Isabella's hand moved to the leather pouch at her waist. Inside lay her last possession of value, a single gold doubloon from her father, all that remained of the Fairfax fortune, lost to her late husband's gambling debts. 100 pieces of 8. The bid came from Governor Blackwood himself, whose cruelty was legendary. Isabella knew what fate awaited any pirate in his hands: slow public execution. The crowd murmured approval. 100 pieces was a fortune. Who could match such a bid? 150. The voice was clear and strong. Every head turned toward Isabella. She had spoken without thinking, driven by impulse she couldn't name. Her single coin was worth perhaps 20 pieces. Nowhere near enough. Governor Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Lady Fairfax, isn't it? How unexpected. And how do you propose to pay such a sum?" Isabella lifted her chin. "I have my methods, Governor." "Indeed? Then perhaps you'd care to make good immediately. Cash only." The crowd pressed closer, sensing drama. Isabella felt trapped, but then she met Drake's eyes. Something passed between them, recognition of two souls with nothing left to lose. "The lady seems to be having second thoughts," Blackwood observed. "Perhaps we should return to serious bidding." "Wait!" Drake's voice was rough but carried unmistakable authority. "The lady made a fair bid. Honor it." Blackwood laughed. "Honor? From a pirate? You're hardly in position to make demands." "Perhaps not," Drake replied, his grey eyes on Isabella's face. "But I know something about honor you've forgotten, and I know something about treasure you'll never understand. Enlighten us." Drake's gaze remained on Isabella. "True treasure isn't measured in gold. It's found in courage, in sacrifice, in willingness to risk everything for what's right. Sometimes it comes in the most unexpected forms." Isabella felt warmth stir within her, purpose that had been missing for years. She stepped forward and reached into her pouch. "Governor Blackwood, I offer this as payment." She held up the single doubloon, and the crowd erupted in laughter. "My dear lady," Blackwood chuckled, "that coin is worth perhaps 20 pieces. Hardly sufficient." "Look closer," Isabella said quietly. Blackwood examined the coin, his expression changing. The laughter died as others pressed forward to see. "Impossible," Blackwood whispered. Isabella's father had been a collector of rare antiquities. The coin was from Captain Henry Morgan's legendary treasure, worth a king's ransom to the right collector. "Where did you get this?" "It belonged to my father, and now it belongs to you, in exchange for Captain Drake's freedom." Blackwood stared at the coin, torn between greed and suspicion. Finally, avarice won. "Very well. The pirate is yours, Lady Fairfax, though I can't imagine what you intend to do with him." "That," said a new voice, "is where we come in." 3 rough sailors approached, pirates with unmistakable bearing. Their leader, a tall man with greying hair, stepped forward with a slight bow. "Lady Fairfax, I presume. Thomas Hartwell, formerly first mate of the Crimson Revenge. We've come to collect our captain." "Now see here," Blackwood sputtered, "this woman has purchased—" "A man's freedom," Hartwell interrupted smoothly, "which makes him free to go where he chooses." The legal implications were murky, but the pirates looked capable of making their point with steel. Blackwood pocketed the coin and stepped back. As guards unlocked Drake's chains, Isabella wondered what she'd gotten into. She had acted on impulse, and now she was involved with pirates and treasure. "My lady," Drake said quietly, rubbing his raw wrists, "I find myself in your debt." "Thomas," Drake continued, "escort Lady Fairfax to the Sea Witch. Give her the captain's cabin." Captain," Hartwell said carefully, "perhaps we should discuss—" "There's nothing to discuss. The lady spent her treasure to purchase my freedom. That makes her part of this crew." Isabella felt panic. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I simply wanted to help. I have no intention of—" "Of what?" Drake stepped closer. "Of claiming what you've bought? Of seeing where your investment leads? I'm a lady, Captain Drake. I don't belong on a pirate ship." Drake smiled, transforming his face. "My lady, you stopped being just a lady the moment you bid on a pirate captain's freedom. The question now is, what do you intend to become?" Before Isabella could answer, shouts erupted. Royal Marines pushed through the crowd, their officer pointing at their group. "Time to go," Hartwell said urgently. They dashed through Port Royal's winding streets, Isabella's skirts hampering her. When they reached the harbour, a sleek sloop waited at anchor. "The Sea Witch," Drake said with pride. "She's not the largest ship in the Caribbean, but she's the fastest." As they rowed toward the vessel, Isabella studied her new companions. The ship was beautiful in a deadly way, clean lines and bristling cannon, built for speed and combat. "Second thoughts?" Drake asked. Isabella looked back at Port Royal, where Marines still searched the docks. Behind lay genteel poverty and social ostracism. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and possibly death. "No," she said firmly. "No second thoughts." Drake nodded approvingly. "Good, because once we set sail, there's no going back. You'll be branded a pirate by association, wanted by every navy in the Caribbean. Then I suppose I'd better learn to be a good one." The Sea Witch's crew was surprisingly disciplined and respectful. When Drake introduced her as the lady who bought my freedom, they treated her with reverence. "You'll want to change clothes," suggested Anne Bonny, the quartermaster. "Those skirts will get you killed in a fight." "I don't intend to fight," Anne laughed. "Honey, intention has nothing to do with it. On this ship, everyone fights. It's the only way to stay alive." As the Sea Witch cleared Port Royal's harbour, Isabella stood at the stern rail, watching her old life disappear. "Regrets?" Drake appeared beside her. "Many, but not about this." "Good, because what lies ahead will test every assumption you've ever had about yourself, about honor, about what it means to be free. And if I fail the test, then you'll die as you lived, on your own terms. But somehow I don't think failure is in your nature, Lady Isabella Fairfax." As the sun set over the Caribbean, Isabella felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. She had spent her last gold coin to free a pirate captain, and in doing so, she had freed herself. 3 weeks at sea had transformed Lady Isabella Fairfax. Gone were elaborate gowns and careful mannerisms, replaced by practical breeches, loose shirt, and the confident stride of someone who had learned to move with a ship's rolling deck. "Port side, 2 points off the bow," called the lookout. "Spanish galleon, flying merchant colours." Captain Drake lowered his spyglass with satisfaction. "Perfect. She's heavy in the water, loaded with cargo. Thomas, signal battle stations." Isabella felt her pulse quicken. She had witnessed 3 such encounters, each teaching her about piracy's deadly dance. But this time felt different. Drake had asked her to join him on the quarterdeck during action. "Are you certain?" "I'm hardly qualified." "You're more qualified than you think," Drake interrupted. "You've been watching, learning, and you can read Spanish, can't you?" Isabella nodded. Her father had insisted she learn multiple languages, a skill that had seemed useless but proved invaluable aboard a pirate ship. "Then you'll help us determine her cargo before we decide how to proceed. Not all Spanish ships are worth the risk." The Sea Witch closed rapidly, her sleek hull cutting through azure waters like a blade. As they drew near, Isabella saw the Spanish crew scrambling to prepare defenses, but it was too late. "Ahoy there!" Drake called through his speaking trumpet. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and we'll send you to the bottom." The Spanish captain's response was a broadside that whistled harmlessly overhead. Drake had anticipated the move, positioning just outside effective range. "So much for diplomacy," he grinned. "Anne, bring us alongside. Boarding party, prepare for action." What followed was a masterclass in naval warfare. The Sea Witch danced around the larger, slower galleon like a shark circling wounded prey. Drake's gunners targeted rigging and steering rather than trying to sink her. "Why don't you just destroy her?" Isabella asked. "Dead men can't surrender," Drake replied, "and sunken ships don't yield treasure. The goal is to disable and capture, not annihilate." Within an hour, the Spanish galleon was dead in the water, her crew ready to surrender. As the boarding party swung across, Isabella followed, driven by growing curiosity. The Spanish captain accepted defeat with grace. "I am Captain Rodriguez of the Santa Maria. I surrender my ship and cargo." "Wisely done," Drake replied. "Lady Isabella, would you examine the ship's manifest?" Isabella took the documents, scanning the Spanish text. What she read made her gasp. "Marcus, this isn't just a merchant vessel. According to this, she's carrying medical supplies to a fever outbreak in Cartagena. Medicines, doctors, food for the sick." Drake's expression grew serious. Around them, his crew waited for orders, faces showing disappointment at finding humanitarian supplies instead of treasure. "Captain Rodriguez, tell me about this fever outbreak." The Spanish captain's eyes filled with tears. "Yellow fever, senor. It struck 3 weeks ago. Hundreds dying daily. These supplies are the only hope for thousands of innocent people." Isabella watched Drake's internal struggle play out behind his gray eyes. "Captain," called Thomas Hartwell, "what are your orders?" Drake was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he turned to his crew. "We're escorting the Santa Maria to Cartagena. Full protection until she reaches port." The crew erupted in protests. "Captain, we need supplies." "What about our share? We can't work for free." "Enough!" Drake's voice cut through complaints. "We're pirates, not murderers. We don't profit from innocent suffering." "But, Captain," a young crew member protested, "we've been at sea for weeks. The men need to remember what separates us from common criminals," Drake said firmly. "We have a code, and that code doesn't allow profiting from plague and death." Isabella felt warmth bloom in her chest, watching Drake face down his crew's greed. This was the man she had seen in chains, not just a pirate, but a principled leader. "I'll make up the difference," she said suddenly, surprising everyone. "My lady," Drake turned with raised eyebrows, "the crew's shares. I have resources, contacts in Port Royal who owe my family favors. I can arrange supplies and payment." It was a lie. Isabella had no resources beyond her education, but she had been thinking, planning, seeing opportunities others missed. "Isabella, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. You freed me from meaningless gentility. Let me contribute something meaningful in return." The escort mission took 2 days, during which Isabella observed both Drake and his crew. She saw how he balanced authority with compassion, maintained discipline while caring for his people's welfare. Despite grumbling, the crew trusted him implicitly. "You're falling in love with him," Anne Bonny observed one evening as they watched Drake navigate by stars. "I beg your pardon?" Isabella tried to sound scandalized, but her blush betrayed her. "Don't deny it. I've seen that look before in my own mirror. There's something about a man who commands the sea that gets into a woman's blood." "It's not just that," Isabella admitted. "It's everything. His honor, his strength, the way he sees possibilities where others see problems. And what does he see when he looks at you?" Isabella considered the question. She had caught Drake watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Admiration, certainly, but something deeper, recognition of a kindred spirit. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Their arrival in Cartagena was met with tears of gratitude. The medical supplies were desperately needed, and Captain Rodriguez ensured everyone knew the English pirates had not only spared his ship, but protected it. "Most unusual," commented the Spanish port commander. "Pirates with honor. Perhaps there is hope for this world." As they sailed from Cartagena, Isabella found Drake alone at the bow, staring at the endless blue horizon. "Regrets?" she asked, echoing his earlier words. "None, though I suspect my crew thinks I've gone soft." "Your crew thinks you're a leader worth following. There's a difference." Drake turned to look at her. "Is that what you think? That I'm worth following?" "I think you're worth a great deal more than you give yourself credit for." "And what about you?" Drake stepped closer, his voice dropping. "What are you worth, Lady Isabella Fairfax?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Isabella felt her heart racing as she realized they were no longer talking about abstract concepts. "I don't know. I spent so many years being told what I should be that I lost track of who I actually am." "Then perhaps," Drake said, touching her cheek gently, "it's time to find out." Before Isabella could respond, shouts erupted from the crow's nest. "Ships on the horizon! British colours! Looks like a full squadron!" Drake shifted instantly into command mode. "How many ships?" "5, Captain. Frigates and a ship of the line." Isabella felt her blood turn to ice. A British squadron of that size meant they had been hunted down, probably on Governor Blackwood's orders. "Can we outrun them?" "Not all of them," Drake replied grimly. "The Sea Witch is fast, but not fast enough to outrun 5 ships with favorable wind." "Then what do we do?" Drake was quiet, his tactical mind working through possibilities. Finally, he addressed his crew. "Listen well. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we have advantages. Speed, maneuverability, and surprise. We're going to split their formation, take out their lead ship, and escape in the confusion." "That's suicide," protested a crew member. "No," Drake replied with a grim smile. "That's piracy." What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of Isabella's life. The Sea Witch raced toward the British squadron at full sail, her crew working with machine-like precision. As they closed with the enemy, Drake's plan became clear. They were going to ram the lead frigate. "Hold fast!" Drake shouted as the ships closed. The impact was tremendous, sending both vessels reeling. But the Sea Witch had been built for such tactics, her reinforced bow designed to punch through enemy hulls. The British frigate began taking on water immediately. "Boarding party away!" Drake commanded, and his crew swarmed over the damaged frigate. Isabella found herself in the thick of action, wielding a cutlass she had learned to use. The fighting was fierce but brief. The British crew, demoralized by surprise attack, surrendered quickly. "Isabella!" Drake's voice cut through chaos. "The ship's papers! Find them!" She raced toward the frigate's cabin, heart pounding with adrenaline. Inside, she found the ship's orders, written in Governor Blackwood's unmistakable hand. "Marcus!" she called, waving the papers. "You need to see this!" Drake appeared at her side, his face grim as he read. "Son of a bitch! Blackwood's put a bounty on our heads. £5,000 for me, 2,000 for you." "Me?" Isabella stared in shock. "But I'm not even a real pirate." "You are now," Drake said with mixed pride and concern. "The moment you stepped aboard my ship, you became one of us, and now you're wanted by the Crown." Cannon fire reminded them they were still in battle. The other British ships were closing fast. "Time to go," Drake said, grabbing Isabella's hand. "Can you swim?" "What? Why would I need to?" Her question was answered as Drake led her to the frigate's rail. Below, the Sea Witch waited, her crew preparing to cast off. "Trust me," Drake said, and before Isabella could protest, they were falling toward dark water. The next few minutes were a blur of salt water, shouting, and cannon thunder. Somehow, they made it back aboard the Sea Witch, and somehow Drake's crew extracted them from the British trap. As they sailed away from the burning frigate, Isabella found herself shaking with reaction. "You did well," Drake said quietly, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Better than well. You saved us all by finding those orders." "I was terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you alive, but you didn't let it paralyze you, and that's what matters." As adrenaline faded, Isabella became aware that the entire crew was watching them. There was something in their expressions, respect, but also expectation. "Captain," Thomas Hartwell said formally, "the crew would like a word." Drake nodded, and the pirates gathered in a loose circle, Isabella felt suddenly self-conscious, aware that some momentous decision was about to be made. "We've been talking," Hartwell continued, "and we've reached a unanimous decision. Lady Isabella has proven herself in battle, shown courage under fire, and saved our lives with quick thinking. Your point, Thomas? We want to make it official. We want to elect her as ship's quartermaster." Isabella gasped. The quartermaster was the second most important position on a pirate ship, responsible for discipline, loot distribution, and representing crew interests to the captain. I couldn't possibly. I don't know enough." "You know enough," Anne Bonny interrupted, "and you'll learn the rest. The question is, do you want to?" Isabella looked around at the faces surrounding her, these rough, dangerous people who had become her family. Then she looked at Drake, whose grey eyes held an expression she finally recognized: love. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I do." The cheer from the crew could probably be heard in Port Royal. As pirates celebrated their new quartermaster, Drake pulled Isabella aside. "You realize what this means? There's no going back now. You're not just associated with pirates. You are one." "I know, and I'm not afraid anymore." "Good, because I have something to tell you." Drake's expression grew serious. "When I said you were my treasure, I wasn't speaking metaphorically." "What do you mean?" "I mean that in all my years of sailing, in all the gold and silver I've claimed, I've never found anything as valuable as what you gave me that day in Port Royal." "My father's coin?" "No," Drake said, taking her hands. "Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to risk everything for a stranger. That's worth more than all the treasure in the Caribbean." Isabella felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus, I love you, Isabella Fairfax," he said simply. "I loved you from the moment you spent your last gold coin to free me. And if you'll have me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that you made a good investment." Isabella's answer was a kiss that tasted of salt air and adventure, of freedom and possibility. Around them, the crew cheered again. And somewhere in the distance, the sun set over the endless Caribbean, painting the sky in shades of gold and promise. She had spent her last gold coin to free a pirate captain, and in return, she had found something far more valuable than money. She had found herself, her purpose, and her heart's true treasure. The adventure was far from over, but Isabella Fairfax, now Quartermaster Isabella of the Sea Witch, was ready for whatever the sea might bring.